On August 24th, 1995, Microsoft released Windows 95 to the world. August 24th, 2020 marks the 25th anniversary of its release. The last time I took a retrospective look at an operating system, I built an entire computer to make the most of everything it could do. But I have something different in mind this time. A viewer in Ohio made a very generous offer to send me this complete, original Gateway 2000 G6 333, a factory Windows 95 system. So today we're going to take a look at getting it up and running and what made Windows 95 one of the most revolutionary operating systems of all time. This computer was mailed to me in a very large shipment that included the system itself and peripherals like the keyboard, mouse, and monitor. And careful packaging was done to make sure everything arrived as safely as possible. Initially, I thought the desktop had been through some rough hits, but it ended up being just fine. It, along with all of the other parts, thankfully had no damage. The original CRT monitor, inarguably the most fragile with a glass tube, was shipped extremely securely in a sturdy shipping crate. The keyboard and mouse were mixed in with some of the documentation and software. And there was a lot of software included here, but we'll need to get this computer up and running before we can make use of that. The first step is getting the desktop back in shape. I took it outside and did an initial cleaning on it with an air compressor. After that, I brought it in so we could take a better look at the insides. Large capacitors in systems like this have become infamous for failing, but thankfully, these had no signs of issues and ended up working just fine. Next, I turned my focus to the cards. This system still had all the original parts it came with the exception of the memory and hard drive. The graphics card included with it is an AGP interface STB Velocity 128, an early fully integrated 3D and 2D card with a healthy 4 megabytes of VRAM. The chip at the heart of it was a Riva 128 from an up-and-coming graphics company called NVIDIA. The sound card is an Ensoniq Audio PCI, a last attempt by Ensoniq who was struggling at the time, and it's aimed at being a more affordable card. Then we have the Telepath modem, something I can't really make use of now since I lack any kind of phone line. And the last card that you may have missed earlier is actually the CPU, a Pentium 2 clocked at 333 MHz in the slot 1 form factor. At this point, I'll also replace the missing RAM. I had a 128 megabyte stick of the SD RAM this system takes handy. It's double what this computer would have shipped with, but hey, why not? Next, on to the drives. The system came with a 32-speed CD-ROM drive fit into the case and a 1.4 megabyte 3.5-inch floppy drive molded, frankly, a little too deep into the plastic. And what is the only modification of this system as far as I can see, an HP CD-ROM writer was installed. The space it had to be put into was originally covered by a removable panel that has long since been separated by the system. Lastly, I need to replace the hard drive, and I'm going to be significantly overshooting the original 8GB drive with a 100GB model. With the memory and storage sorted out now, the computer itself is ready to go, and we can turn our attention to the peripherals. First, let's take a look at the mouse. Right away, we can see it's actually a rebranded Microsoft IntelliMouse. I was advised that the mouse had a sticking scroll wheel, and it was indeed fully seized. I disassembled, cleaned, and modified it to try and fix this, but I think the rubber has expanded over time and is stuck against the bottom of the wheel track. I found another sporadic problem with the sensor for the vertical axis that prevents the cursor from being able to move down sometimes. I'm not sure where the problem is on this, but I think a better option at this point will be to transplant a working Microsoft IntelliMouse into this shell. The keyboard only has one slight problem. The Gateway logo on it has some corrosion, but a little CLR and scrubbing got it looking very shiny and new again. Aside from that, it's an average rubber dome keyboard and doesn't have any exciting features like its AnyKey predecessor. And lastly, we have the EV900 monitor, a 19-inch 0.26 dot pitch CRT with digital controls. It's able to be cranked all the way up to 1600 by 1200 and at lower resolutions up to 160 Hz. There should be a Boston Acoustic speaker set with this system for it to be complete as shipped, but the original owner actually mentioned that it had failed and was thrown out some time ago. But that's it! We're ready to get this back up and running with Windows 95 now. But before we start the install process, one more thing about this system. How much do you think it cost? For an above-average Gateway 2000 multimedia system with complete peripheral setup, you could expect to pay $3,000, or $4,820 in 2020 dollars. This was a significant computer to get into for sure. And now, as we continue on, we're going to turn to the software pack that came with it. This contained extra software, some games, a gateway system disk, as well as the original installation media. And there is something interesting to note about this. Windows 95 was an interesting case for version releases, because as far as consumers were concerned, there was always one version of Windows 95. What you got in the box when you bought it was always the same until it was replaced by Windows 98. However, the version that was shipped to system manufacturers did get updated, and this computer came with a version known as OSR2 that included initial support for USB. Alright, now let's pop in the Windows 95 disk and begin the reinstall. The install process isn't too special if you've ever installed Windows before. It pretty much comes down to choosing where to put it, what features you want, and waiting for the transfer. And while I was watching the install, I noticed all of these banner images on the side and quite liked them. So I pulled them all out of my captured footage and put together a phone background set made of them. It's linked below if you want some mid-90s computer goodness on your phone. Once the install process has finished though, we are greeted with the familiar pale green background and the helpful startup tips. At this point though, our job isn't done yet. We still need to install drivers for everything. Since this system is basically stock though, we can pop in the gateway system disk and get everything we need from there. Welcome to 16 color graphics. It shouldn't look like this, but without video drivers, this is the best that Windows 95 can guarantee your computer can do. But this handy program from Gateway can help us get our graphics card set back up. And wow, once it's installed, that's some heavy customization to the system UI. Here we can also poke around the settings and crank the monitor up to 120 Hz. There's not much reason to do that for Windows itself though. There aren't really any animations to take advantage of that. But games could, though it will take something easy to run and highly configurable to get that out of them. But we now have much improved color support and can go back and get the sound drivers off of the disk. And the system disk is already looking much better now as we begin that process. But with that driver installed now, let's go ahead and do our first full reboot. The startup sound goes along with something that stood out to me as I've been using this system. It's really excited to make noises all the time. There are a few annoying quirks though right after the install. Explorer defaults to opening new folders in New Windows, so you'll likely want to change it to use just one. Then you'll notice you don't have any navigation controls, and you'll have to enable them to see the path and move around. Then you may find that you don't have a My Documents folder. You are still expected to handle file management yourself on your bare hard drive. These are all little things, though, that can be chalked up to just how radically different the Windows 95 UI was. And this is easily the most important aspect of it. So many things we take for granted as standard were all new in this release of Windows. There is now a system tray for accessing background applications and receiving notifications. Next to that, the taskbar area that displays running programs and allows easily switching between them. And finally, the Start button, a menu accessible with a single click or press of the new Windows key that gives you access to all of your programs, the settings for managing the system, and a list of recent files for you to continue working with. The Start menu was a significant innovation and prominently displayed on the back of the box. Another significant feature available in Windows 95 was Internet Explorer. The inclusion of Internet Explorer in Windows 95 removed just one more barrier for people to begin using the web, and it worked. IE was the most popular browser by far for many years after that. Its availability undoubtedly helped promote the growth of the internet, though its inclusion with the operating system has become contentious at times for the clear advantage it gave it over its competitors' products. And IE has rarely been a force for good by creating their own features that web pages could use, effectively preventing other browsers from displaying them at all. This, coupled with other abrasive tactics, left many disgruntled with it, and as it is finally being put out to pasture this year, there aren't many tears being shed. The last significant feature I want to touch on has had a very different reception, despite also being a Microsoft exclusive feature. Windows 95 introduced DirectX to people for the first time. Early 3D rendering was done on cards dedicated to the task, like the Voodoo 2 I put in my Tiny Pentium system. In addition to the hardware itself, these companies would need to create a software interface with their cards for developers to write programs with. This means that if the program you wanted to run, which included games, wasn't designed for the 3D card you had, you couldn't run it. And supporting multiple cards meant including, developing, and testing software on all of them. This is where DirectX stepped in. It was a unifying layer of software between programs and hardware that let programmers only have to write code once to support all the cards of the time. Hardware manufacturers could then write their software as a driver that DirectX could translate the program's graphics needs to match. Which brings me back to one more thing that was sent along with this computer. All of the games in their boxes that the original owner had purchased to play on this computer. I'm gonna pick out a few of these games, as well as some others I have, to give you a feeling of what gaming was like on Windows 95.
Serious?
Three, two, one, go!
To fight the effects of wear and tear, a soldier with maintenance skill can use a maintenance tool to improve the condition of his weapon. Open your inventory.
Get ready! Go!
Windows 95 definitely had its time to shine, and can be thanked for introducing so many new features that I still couldn't fit them all in this video on it. And there are still some underlying traces of it in Windows 10 today that you can see when you run an older program on it. I'm glad to have had the opportunity to bring this system back to life and preserve it as an example of how this OS was used. I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth look at Windows 95, and if you want to see more stuff like this, you should subscribe. If you want to support the channel, I am on Patreon, but for now, that's it, and I'll see you next time.